The Italian Peninsula is grappling with the devastating aftermath of Storm Harry, a powerful Mediterranean cyclone that has swept across the country over the past 48 hours. Labeled by meteorologists as a Medicane, Mediterranean hurricane, the storm has left a trail of destruction from the northern Alpine regions to the southern shores of Sicily, claiming lives, destroying infrastructure, and displacing thousands of residents. Storm Harry intensified rapidly over the Tyrrhenian Sea, fueled by unseasonably warm sea temperatures. According to the Italian Meteorological Service, Meteo.it, the storm reached its peak intensity on Wednesday evening, with sustained winds of 140 kilometers per hour and gusts exceeding 190 kilometers per hour in coastal areas. The storm brought extraordinary rainfall levels. In parts of Liguria and Tuscany, over 400 millimeters of rain fell in less than 12 hours, equivalent to 4 months of average rainfall. This led to flash flood conditions that turned streets into raging rivers within minutes. In the mountainous regions of Piedmont and Lombardy, the primary threat was landslides. Heavy saturated soil gave way in the Aosta Valley, cutting off several remote villages. The Italian Civil Protection Department, Protezione Civile, deployed helicopters to evacuate residents from high-risk zones where roads had collapsed into valleys. The region of Tuscany bore the brunt of the flooding. The Arno River reached critical levels, forcing authorities to close bridges in Florence as a precautionary measure. In the city of Pisa, the local government declared a state of emergency after the drainage systems failed, flooding the historic center. In Rome, the Eternal City saw hundreds of downed trees blocking major arteries like the Via Appia. The Tiber River overflowed in its lower reaches, flooding agricultural lands on the outskirts of the capital. Sicily and Sardinia faced the full force of Harry's winds. In Palermo, port authorities suspended all ferry services to Naples and Tunis as waves reached heights of 8 meters. Significant damage was reported to citrus groves and olive plantations, marking a severe blow to the local agricultural economy. As of Friday morning, the official death toll stands at 14, with several individuals still reported missing. Most fatalities occurred due to vehicles being swept away by floodwaters or falling trees. The Italian government, led by the Prime Minister, has convened an emergency cabinet meeting to allocate an initial €500 million recovery fund. Over 15,000 emergency personnel, including the Fire Brigade, Vigili del Fuoco, and the Army, are currently on the ground. "We are facing a climate emergency that requires extraordinary measures," stated the Minister for Civil Protection. "The priority now is to reach those who are isolated and restore power to the 200,000 households currently in the dark." The main railway line connecting Milan to Rome suffered significant delays due to debris on the tracks. Several regional airports, including Florence and Olbia, remained closed for 24 hours. Initial reports from the Ministry of Culture suggest minor water damage to several historic basements in Venice, though the Meuse flood barrier system successfully prevented a major Acqua Alta event in the lagoon city. Climate scientists at the Euro-Mediterranean Center on Climate Change, CMCC, warn that Storm Harry is a symptom of a warming planet. The Mediterranean is warming 20% faster than the global average, providing more energy for storms to transform into destructive medicanes. As the eye of Storm Harry moves eastward towards the Balkans, Italy begins the arduous task of cleaning up. Volunteers from across the country, known as the Angels of the Mud, are expected to descend upon the hardest-hit towns this weekend to assist residents. Authorities urge citizens to remain vigilant as the ground remains unstable and the risk of further landslides continues. For real-time updates on weather warnings and safety protocols, residents are advised to monitor the National Disaster Portal. As the floodwaters of Storm Harry begin to recede, the Italian government and economic analysts are facing a grim reality. What was initially feared as a severe weather event has transformed into one of the costliest natural disasters in the country's modern history. With structural damages, agricultural wipeouts, and industrial paralysis, the total economic loss is currently projected to exceed €8.5 billion. The agricultural sector, the backbone of the Italian rural economy, has been hit with apocalyptic force. In the regions of Tuscany, Emilia-Romagna, and Sicily, the timing of Storm Harry could not have been worse. In Sicily and Calabria, hurricane-force winds uprooted centuries-old olive trees. Preliminary data from Coldiretti, the National Confederation of Farmers, suggests that nearly 30% of the upcoming olive oil harvest has been lost. In the north, particularly in Piedmont, landslides have buried premium vineyards. The loss is not just in this year's grapes, but in the permanent destruction of the specialized soil and vines that take decades to mature. Flash floods trapped thousands of animals in the Po Valley. Farmers report the loss of over 50,000 head of livestock, leading to a projected spike in dairy and meat prices across the Eurozone. At least 12 regional bridges collapsed under the pressure of debris-laden torrents. The Autostrada del Sole, A1, Italy's main north-south artery, faced multiple closures due to mudslides, causing a logistical bottleneck that has delayed the delivery of essential goods. High-speed rail lines, Frecciarossa, suffered damage to signaling systems and track beds. Repairs are estimated to take months, with the FS Italian Group estimating repair costs alone at 1.2 billion euros. The Port of Genoa and the Port of Livorno faced significant damage to crane systems and container storage areas due to a 4-meter storm surge, halting international trade routes for several days. In urban centers like Pisa, Prato, and Vicenza, the scenes are heartbreaking. Over 45,000 homes have been reported as damaged or uninhabitable. Basements and ground floor apartments were submerged, destroying furniture, electrical systems, and personal histories. In the worst-hit areas, the mud is over 2 meters deep inside homes. Currently, the Italian Red Cross, Croce Rossa Italiana, is managing temporary shelters for nearly 80,000 displaced persons. The long-term challenge will be the climate refugees within Italy who cannot return to landslide-prone hillside towns. Meanwhile, the French Republic is currently facing one of its most severe meteorological crises in decades as Storm Harry, a violent Atlantic depression, tore through the country over the past 48 hours. With wind speeds rivaling historical hurricanes and unprecedented rainfall, the storm has left a massive footprint of destruction, leaving millions without power, disrupting the national economy, and forcing the government to declare a state of natural disaster, Catastrophe Naturelle, across 40 departments. According to France, Storm Harry underwent bombogenesis, a rapid drop in atmospheric pressure, just before making landfall on the Brittany coast. On the island of Ouessant, gusts were clocked at a staggering 215 kilometers per hour, while inland cities like Nantes and Rennes saw gusts exceeding 160 kilometers per hour. In the Cévennes mountain range, stationary rain bands dumped over 450 millimeters of rain in 24 hours, triggering immediate flash floods that turned sleepy valleys into torrents of mud and debris. The northwestern regions bore the initial brunt. The maritime infrastructure has been severely compromised. In the port of Saint-Malo, massive storm surges breached seawalls, flooding the historic Intramuros district. At the height of the storm, Enedis, the national grid operator, reported that 1.2 million households were plunged into darkness as high-voltage lines were snapped like twigs by falling trees. Local authorities estimate that millions of trees in the Brocéliande forest have been uprooted, a loss of biodiversity that will take a century to recover. While the north faced wind, the south faced water. The Rhône River and its tributaries overflowed, reaching levels not seen since the Great Floods of 1999. Landslides in the mountainous hinterland of Nice destroyed several villas and cut off the main access roads to the Mercantour National Park. The vineyards of Bordeaux and the Rhône Valley have suffered catastrophic soil erosion. Farmers report that the Force 11 winds have destroyed trellis systems and storage warehouses, with the FNSEA, National Federation of Agricultural Holders Unions, estimating losses at over 2 billion euros. The high-speed TGV Atlantic and TGV Southeast lines were suspended after overhead catenary wires were downed and tracks were buried under mud. Thousands of passengers were stranded in stations across Paris, Gare du Nord and Gare de Lyon. Air France cancelled over 400 flights at Paris Charles de Gaulle and Orly airports due to extreme crosswinds, affecting international travel corridors. Major motorways, a 10 and a 7, were closed in sections to prevent high-sided vehicles from being blown over, causing a total logjam in the national logistics chain. The Ministry of the Interior has confirmed 11 fatalities and over 150 injuries directly linked to the storm. Most deaths occurred due to collapsing structures or falling trees hitting moving vehicles. Over 40,000 firefighters, sapeurs-pompiers, and civil protection volunteers have been deployed. In the Vendée region, elite diving units were used to rescue families trapped on the roofs of their homes. President Emmanuel Macron, following an emergency cabinet meeting, announced the mobilization of the Solidarity Fund. The president stated, "The state will stand by every citizen. Our priority is life first, then the reconstruction of our shattered heritage." The financial cost of Storm Harry is expected to be a heavy burden on the French economy in 2026. The France Assureurs Federation predicts that claims will reach 6.5 billion euros, making it one of the top 3 most expensive storms in French history. Major manufacturing plants in the north, including automotive factories, were forced to halt production due to power instability and supply chain breaks, leading to a temporary dip in industrial output. Several historic chateaux reported damage to slate roofs and stained glass windows. In the capital, the Seine River reached its orange alert level, forcing the closure of riverside museums like the Musée d'Orsay, which moved its lower-level collections to higher ground as a precaution. Climate experts at the Pierre-Simon Laplace Institute, IPSL, have pointed out that Storm Harry is a clear indicator of the tropicalization of the North Atlantic. Warmer sea surface temperatures provided the thermal energy needed for the storm to maintain its intensity even after hitting land. This event has reignited the national debate on the green transition and the need for more resilient urban planning. Storm Harry has been a brutal reminder of nature's power. While the physical damage is immense, shattered glass, collapsed bridges, and flooded fields, the spirit of fraternité is visible across the country. However, as the frequency of such once-in-a-century storms increases, France faces the long-term challenge of adapting its infrastructure to a more volatile climate. While the winds of Storm Harry have finally subsided, the hexagonal nation is waking up to a landscape of unprecedented economic and structural ruin. Initial assessments by the French Treasury and leading insurance bodies suggest that the total cost of the destruction could soar past 10 billion euros, potentially making it the most expensive climatic event in French history. From the industrial hubs of the north to the prestigious vineyards of the south, the damage is both deep and widespread. The destruction of key logistics hubs in Hauts-de-France and Grand Est has halted the flow of goods. Several major automotive plants, including those of Renault and Stellantis, reported structural damage to factory roofs and the flooding of precision machinery, leading to an estimated production loss of 150 million euros per day. Thousands of commerçants, small shopkeepers, in coastal towns from Brest to Biarritz, have seen their entire inventories destroyed by storm surges. The CCI, Chambre de Commerce et d'Industrie, warns that without immediate state intervention, up to 15% of these small businesses may never reopen. In the Bordeaux and Loire Valley regions, Force 12 gusts destroyed trellis systems and protective netting. More critically, the extreme rainfall has caused massive soil erosion, stripping away the fertile topsoil of world-renowned terroirs. Recovery for these vineyards is measured not in seasons, but in decades. In the breadbasket of the Beauce region, over 200,000 hectares of winter crops are currently submerged. In the south, the flooding of the Garonne and Rhône rivers resulted in the tragic loss of over 60,000 head of cattle and sheep, a blow to the national food supply chain. At its peak, Storm Harry snapped over 4,000 high-voltage pylons. Enedis engineers described the damage as surgical and severe, with some rural areas expected to remain without power for at least 2 more weeks. 7 departmental bridges have been washed away, and several secondary dams in the Massif Central are under constant surveillance due to structural cracks caused by the immense hydraulic pressure of the floodwaters. The SNCF reports that hundreds of kilometers of trackbed have been liquefied or washed out. Furthermore, fiber optic lines buried along rail corridors were severed, causing a massive internet and telecommunications blackout across the western provinces. Estimates from France indicate that over 65,000 residential buildings have sustained major to total damage. In the Vendée and Charente-Maritime regions, the combination of seawall breaches and heavy rain has left thousands of homes filled with toxic mud and salt water. Approximately 110,000 citizens are currently in temporary housing, schools, or community centers. The government is facing a looming housing crisis as many of these climate evacuees have no homes to return to. Meanwhile, the Kingdom of Spain is currently in the grip of a national emergency as Storm Harry, a ferocious Mediterranean Atlantic hybrid cyclone, has torn through the Iberian Peninsula. The storm, which meteorologists have described as a once-in-a-generation event, has unleashed catastrophic flash floods in the east, hurricane-force winds in the north, and a historic storm surge along the Balearic Islands. As of Friday, January 23, 2026, the Spanish government has declared several regions as calamity zones. According to the State Meteorological Agency, AEMET, Storm Harry underwent a process of rapid cyclogenesis over the Iberian Sea before moving inland. The Dana, high-altitude isolated depression, effect associated with Harry caused stationary thunderstorms over Valencia and Murcia. Some stations recorded over 500 millimeters of rain in 24 hours, surpassing the total annual average for those regions. In the Cantabrian Mountains and the Pyrenees, wind gusts reached a terrifying 200 kilometers per hour, while coastal areas in Galicia faced sustained winds of 130 kilometers per hour. The Mediterranean coast has been the hardest hit. The Turia and Júcar rivers burst their banks, inundating thousands of homes and businesses. In the city of Valencia, the underground metro system was completely submerged, and the City of Arts and Sciences faced significant water damage in its lower levels. The Huerta de Valencia, famous for its citrus production, is under 2 meters of water. AVA Asaja, the Valencian Farmers Association, predicts a loss of 60% of the late-season orange and lemon harvest, with damages exceeding 1.5 billion euros. Dozens of secondary roads have been cut off by landslides. In Bilbao, the port was forced to suspend all operations after several shipping containers were blown into the sea by extreme gusts. Tens of thousands of eucalyptus and pine trees have been leveled, blocking major rail lines and damaging the regional power grid. The Balearic Islands, particularly Majorca and Ibiza, faced a massive storm surge. Waves reaching 10 meters in height destroyed seafront promenades, paseos marítimos, and sank over 100 private and commercial vessels in local marinas. Sicily, the Ministry of the Interior has confirmed 18 fatalities across the country, with dozens still missing in the rural areas of Castilla-La Mancha. Over 5,000 soldiers from the Unidad Militar de Emergencias, UME, have been deployed to assist in search and rescue operations. Using amphibious vehicles and helicopters, they have rescued over 1,200 people stranded on rooftops and in vehicles. Approximately 30,000 people have been evacuated from flood-prone areas and are currently being housed in temporary shelters managed by the Spanish Red Cross. The destruction of beaches and coastal infrastructure in the Costa Blanca and Costa del Sol is expected to impact the upcoming spring tourist season, a vital pillar of the Spanish GDP. Prime Minister Pedro Sánchez, visiting the flooded regions of Valencia, emphasized that Storm Harry is a symptom of the climate crisis. We are no longer talking about the future. We are talking about a present where extreme weather is the new reality, the Prime Minister stated. the government has pledged an immediate €3 billion reconstruction package to be funded partly by the EU's Solidarity Fund. Experts from the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, BSC, note that the unusually high temperature of the Mediterranean Sea in early 2026 provided the fuel for Harry's explosive intensity. As the storm finally begins to weaken and move toward North Africa, Spain faces a monumental cleanup task. Thousands of young people organized through social media have started brigades of solidarity to help elderly residents clear mud and debris from their homes. Iberdrola and Endesa have deployed 3,000 technicians to restore electricity to the 400,000 people still without power. Storm Harry has left Spain scarred, but the national response has been one of unity and resilience. The coming months will be a test of the country's ability to rebuild its infrastructure and adapt its urban planning to a world where such superstorms are increasingly common.